Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of Homeschool Live. Today, I am joined with Hal and Melanie Young. You have probably seen them at a homeschool convention or you've seen some of their books. If you've been homeschooling for any period of time, they've written 9 books, including Raising Real Men, No Longer Little. And the first book that I ever saw written by them that my husband and children, my sons received at a men's retreat was Love, Honor, and Virtue. Incredible book. They also have a podcast called Making Biblical Family Life Practical. And they are writers, bloggers, and popular conference speakers internationally. And I'm just so thankful that you've joined me today. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining me.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Heather. So thank you.
Yeah, we love working with TOS. It's one of our favorite organizations.
And thank you. And I wanted to mention you've authored so many articles in the magazine and the THM. And so I'm sure many in our audience are familiar with your work. And we're just so thrilled that you joined us today. So today is a hot topic we are talking about how to homeschool high schoolers. You know, when we get started with homeschooling, that can be really nervous for a lot of parents. They say, oh, I can homeschool, but maybe I'll stop right before high school because they might be a little nervous about that. What would you say to that parent? You know, maybe they just started homeschooling because of the pandemic or whatever, and they're not sure if they're going to hit high school. What would you say to that parent?
This is the most critical time to homeschool because these last few years you have with your kids at home is really that precious time to develop the relationship you'll have the rest of your lives. And whatever you have to do school-wise to manage that is worth it.
And to be fair, you know, we've seen over the years a lot of families begin homeschooling when their children get into high school because they say, you know what, I see the peer pressure and the social issues that they're dealing with at local schools, and I want to avoid that. And so, you know, some people are beginning, even as others are saying, I don't know if I've got the confidence to do that. Yes, you can do this.
I have one more thought about that. A lot of people are terrified about homeschooling high school because middle school is so hard. And middle school is so hard because kids' brains are changing and they lose executive function and they can't remember what you taught them yesterday and they can't focus for a skinny minute. And so you need to know that they're going to get over that. And that when they get into high school, school's going to get so much easier.
Yeah, that's just it. You're going through a rough transition during the middle school years, but by the time they get to high school age, mostly that's over. You're done with that. And so, you know, you're just getting over the hump.
Yes. On Wednesday. You know, Friday is coming, folks.
Yeah, there we go.
I love that example. That's so. Now, how many have you graduated already? How many are still homeschooling right now?
We have a total of 8. We had 6 that we've graduated. We have 2 that are still in high school at home.
Yeah, we had 6 boys in a row, and all of our boys have graduated, and they were all homeschooled from the beginning. And we have our 2 girls are still at home.
Right.
One's a senior and one's a freshman.
Wow. So let's talk about the dynamics between boys and girls. You know, what would you say would be the most effective method in your family homeschooling for boys in the high school years?
In the high school years specifically?
I would say that homeschooling boys in the high school years is a joy and pleasure because boys are difficult to homeschool in the elementary school years. They have a hard time sitting still, hard time focusing. In the middle school years, for most of us,
everybody's
pretty much a nightmare.
Yeah. Everybody's a mess.
But in high school, boys hit an educational growth spurt in high school that is really amazing.
You will likely see tremendous growth between 14 and 18, things that you never expected of not that boy. Yes, that boy.
Yeah, at 14, you're thinking, oh, I hope I can teach him enough to fill out an application to flip hamburgers.
Right.
And at 18, he's getting scholarship offers. It's really bizarre and amazing. But you got to remember, if he tries, so you have to work really hard in middle school and the first year or 2 of high school to maintain his confidence so that he keeps trying instead of just quitting. And if he keeps trying, then when he hits that academic growth spurt, it's going to be amazing.
So we're starting in 9th grade, right? So that would be, you know, when you start high school, and I'm sure that's when you want to start your transcripts. What advice would you give to parents, you know, who are starting with their 9th grader this year? How do they go about preparing their transcripts?
Oh, well, number 1, you do it right. You start right now in the 9th grade.
But don't panic. Don't freak out.
Right.
Because what people people freak out about transcripts, and transcripts are really the easy part of homeschooling high school because it only takes a couple hours. And the important part in the 9th grade is just write down what courses you're taking and write down what extracurriculars you're doing and any awards they get, because you think you will never forget. But when they are fall of their senior year and you're trying to do their transcript, I promise you will have no idea what they did when they were freshmen. None. You will not remember.
Just keep a folder or a notebook or a file on your computer or something.
On your computer.
Just make
in the cloud so you can't lose it.
Yeah, put out in Google Documents, and just make one line notes, that they were in the history club, or they took part in a scouting program,
They
or
were
they
president of their 4-H club.
Yeah, just make a couple of notes there, because when you get to that senior year, you'll be so thankful you could just pull through there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, because you won't even be able to remember what math they were doing.
Right.
That is so true. Are there any maybe extracurricular activities that you would suggest, just for an active boy that might be able to prepare them for what is ahead if they're maybe considering college?
If they're considering college, it's not what extracurricular activity, but that they do some. It's important to have some outside people that can write you recommendation letters and talk about how their what their academic potential is, what their leadership potential is. And so it really doesn't matter what you do, but that you do something and that you pick a couple of things that you can stick with all the way through high school.
Yeah, admissions officers and employers, they understand I'm experimenting. I did this for a year, that for a year, and I'm trying out life. But they also like to see somebody who, say, played in a recreational basketball league for all 4 years, or we're in a band program or something, but it shows, hey, here's something that I'm really interested in and I have persistence with.
Yeah, because they're a little suspicious of the kid that joins a million clubs in spring of their junior year,
Right.
That's what they put on their resume. And so you just want to do some things for a while.
Right.
That's a really good point.
And also to get involved in some volunteer work. Colleges increasingly want to see some kind of volunteer work. And that can be anything. It can be food bank. It can be, that they go work at the food bank once a week or a couple times a month. It can be volunteering with, your church, going to visit elderly people, clean up by the side of the road. It doesn't really matter what, but just that they're doing something that gives back to the community.
Yeah, it sounds like basically just what a lot of homeschoolers do anyway. So it's just a matter of the parents writing it down, right?
That was one of
we have a funny story to tell you about that.
One of our older kids, when we were working through application process with him, he said, "Well, I don't have any community service," and Melanie had to correct him.
What do you mean? And he said, well, isn't community service like people that do something wrong and they have to pick up trash by the side of the road? I said, no. So community service is the things you do, like when you work at our state homeschool conference, checking people in at the desk. And, I listed like 10 different things he does. And he says, oh, I thought everybody did that.
Wow.
So, yeah, so you may have to explain that to your student, to say, hey, it's not just the guys with the reflective vests alongside the freeway. They're doing community service for drunk driving, but you're doing community service because of your love for people.
Yeah.
So do you feel like your kids were nervous about the college application process? How did that go for them?
Oh, I think every kid is nervous about the college application process. And I think the parents are more nervous because it's the first time really that somebody on the outside judges your homeschooling.
Right.
And so it's really scary. But what we have found, both as homeschool leaders, Hal and I served on our state organization's board of directors for 14 years, and as parents, is that colleges welcome homeschoolers with open arms. In fact, most colleges now have a admissions officer dedicated to recruiting homeschool students. And so you really don't have to worry. There's a lot of homeschoolers that have already been there, done that, and gone to college. And you'll be fine. You'll do well. And all of our boys have been offered academic scholarships.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and like you said, the whole range. I mean, historically Christian colleges, big state universities, elite liberal arts colleges. Nobody has ever questioned their abilities or their
transcript
or
or
anything else.
anything.
Nobody's ever given us any flack for being home educated. In fact, they were kind of interested in it.
Yeah, and
Mm.
our kids have gone to the widest variety of
Mhm.
universities.
Yeah.
And we had one study abroad at Oxford University in England.
Mhm.
We've had kids go to the big state university in our state, everything.
Mhm.
Wow. That's awesome. So you have been, homeschooling for a while, and you've, had a lot of experience. And I would love to hear how you came into your ministry company, Raising Real Men. How was that birthed?
Well, to make a
Well,
very long story short.
well, you said the key right there. We had 6 boys in a row, and people
Yeah.
started asking us, how in the world how do you do that? How do you manage that?
And Hal was president of NCHE here in North Carolina, so they'd invite us to come speak, and we'd say, "What do you want to speak about?" And they'd say, "Boys."
Mhm.
Well, I'm going crazy. And so we'd speak, and they'd say, "Do you have a book or something? This was so helpful." And we'd say, "No, we don't have a book. We have a family." And we
Mhm.
didn't think we had time. Eventually we said, it's time. We need to write this book. And we were really surprised because we thought it was going to be just something we put on the table when we spoke in North Carolina. And within a few months, we were getting invitations to speak all over the country. And we've been
Mhm.
full-time authors and speakers ever since.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So,
wonderful.
yeah, it
Mhm.
was just, people ask us, how do I get to do what you're doing? I say, I have no idea. Ask the Lord.
And our other books, I mean, Raising Real Men was our first book, but the other books kind of flowed from that because the second book we wrote about marriage because we felt like that was a sequel to the first one. And then people asked, well, how do you deal with questions about, middle schoolers? We
Oh, we
wrote a book
started
about
getting so many questions. Every time we'd
Yeah.
speak, someone come up and say, my son is driving me crazy. But he's really a good kid.
Yeah.
And I'd say, is he 11? They'd say, how do you know?
Yeah.
That's
They
so
all-
cute.
Yeah, so we wrote No Longer Little, which is about parenting tweens and preteens. And it just kind of, we got a lot of questions about, people saying, what can I use to teach my boys about sexuality? And the books that I read or that my older kids read don't talk about smartphones. What do I do?
Right.
Right.
When we wrote that's when we wrote Love, Honor, and Virtue.
Mhm.
So it just kind of happened organically.
And as I
And
mentioned, go ahead.
No Longer Little, by the way, is about boys and girls. Because by the time we wrote it, we had been through that stage with our girls. So
I was looking through some of the articles that you've written for us for TOS, and there was one article you wrote a while back called Learning That Lasts. And I just thought that was really appropriate because it was talking about hands-on learning. And I feel like I think you said it was, maybe it started through the pandemic, but I'd love if you could share a little more. The hands-on learning option that you offer now through your website through subscription boxes. I'm sure that came from experience that you realized that was something that helped your kids, I imagine. Can you explain how that came to be and how that works?
Well, our boys came to us and said, Mom, Dad, there is nothing out there hands-on for boys. And all the crafty stuff is all like unicorns and rainbows. And so what can we do? So we created Craftsman Crate. It was actually a year before the pandemic, but it really took off during the pandemic because everybody got home with their kids bored. And Craftsman Crate teaches artisanal craft skills using real tools. Everything's included in the kit. There's no trips to the store. If they need a pencil, it's in there. It's sharp.
Yeah.
I mean, everything they need.
Thank you. Homeschoolers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we don't assume that anybody has artistic talent at all. I mean, we just say you're going to open the box, and it's the first time you've thought about it or tried any of this. We're going to take you by the hand and lead you through that.
And we try to include. It's not just do this one project, but it has most boxes have a variety of projects, and it has patterns that appeal to beginners. And patterns to appeal to people that are more artistic, have more skill, patterns that appeal to guys and girls. In fact, we have about a third of our subscribers are adults. And it makes a great high school art credit.
Yeah.
Because they learn a different skill every month. And it's not one of these subscription boxes that you open it up and they do something for 45 minutes and they're done. This is something that's going to take usually a couple of weeks, at least several days to complete. And then it includes a history component. Wow. And so it makes a great art supplement. art
That's
curriculum
awesome.
in high school.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because you can be creative with the credits that you give to your children. Like the parent has that ability to pick and choose. You don't have to go to you can, but you don't have to go to your state website and check all the boxes. You can say, you know what, this will work for my child. I want to try this craftsman crate. This will work, and this can count as a credit. I put the hours in. Obviously check your state laws, right? To make sure how many hours, but you can make it work.
That's something that I think a lot of people miss about high school. I think they're so afraid that they're going to miss something or not do something right, and they obsess over high school and they destroy their kids' love of learning. And something that we've seen is that we had kind of a step change about halfway through our homeschooling. Hal got cancer, and our baby was born with a life-threatening heart condition, and I had to take my hands off. We had to cut out all the fluff and do all the busy work had to go. And those kids actually hit college running because they still had much more of a love for learning. They weren't burnt out. They weren't worn out. And their older siblings did well in college, but they excelled.
Wow.
The guy I was so worried about because I wasn't able to do as much in high school got his doctorate last fall, and now he's on a tenure track professorship, and still loves to learn. And so I think that we need to get rid of fear.
Yeah.
That our standards are so much higher than what is normal in institutional schools right now that we don't have to do every paper. We don't have to. I hear people say, "I want to make sure I have a rigorous enough high school." And we love academics. Understand that our kids have all gone to college. They've all either graduated or are currently in college, and they've done great there. They've done great in their careers. I think that is misplaced. I think in high school, the love of learning and pursuing their passions and getting some passions, finding out what they're interested in is more valuable than rigor.
Wow.
Yeah,
And that was kind of hard for me. I was an A+ OCD homeschooler when we started out. And I really had to realize there's a lot to be seen. There's a lot of value in chasing their passion.
Well, I think a lot of it is that you're encouraging their curiosity and you're giving them an opportunity to develop the skills to pursue knowledge on their own.
Right.
To say, you have a passion for this particular subject or this particular interest of yours. Let's dig into it. Let's learn everything we can about what would it take for you to be an expert in this. Let's get some experience, and that's where the hands-on comes in.
Yeah.
Let's follow one around, or let's get you an apprenticeship, or let's give you some projects to work on so that you can really embed this information into your head. And oh, by the way, you can study anything this way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so don't beat things to death. If they write a paper and they write a good paper, great, move on. Don't say, now let's write 4 more papers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. My kids were watching, they were taking this class, and the woman showed them the Nautilus, which is a ship that goes out and they do deep sea excavating. And the women that were on the current trip were really encouraging them. It doesn't matter if you have ADHD. It doesn't matter if you're, dyslexic. Like if you have that passion and you want to be out here on the ship, like make that your goal and do everything you can. But you don't have to, think inside the box. If that's your passion to learn more about marine, wildlife or just make it happen. So I would love if you could talk maybe to the parents watching who might have kids who have some learning disabilities or struggles. How would you encourage them?
Well, right there, you just brushed against something right there. That as homeschoolers, our educational environment doesn't look like anybody else's, and yours is. It shouldn't really, and your family's homeschool is not going to look like anybody else's homeschool, and that's just great. Which means if you've got a child who learns differently, who needs some accommodation in one area or another, fine,
do it.
You can do it.
Yeah, we've had kids who are severely dyslexic and dysgraphic and ADHD. We had one child who didn't learn to read till he was 11. and was still struggling to write at all at 14. And he's now a college graduate with a double major who won university-wide awards.
Wow.
And he is making six figures working as a financial analyst and has a real estate investment firm on the side.
Wow.
You know, and I'll be honest, in middle school, I'm wondering, can this kid live independently? You know, because I had tried everything to teach him to read. And so I think what I would say to parents who have kids that are struggling, to have hope and to maintain hope that they're going to grow so much in the next few years. And there's some wonderful things that you can do to help that. I'll leave you a link that you can put of a free resource we have for kids who are bright kids who struggle. But also, it will not, most homeschool parents we talk to hesitate to make accommodations. They want their struggling learner, and whether that's struggling because of learning disabilities or chronic illness, we have both in our family. They hesitate to make any accommodation for it because they say the real world's tough. The real world makes accommodations, and colleges don't care how you learned something. They care that you learned it. And so we have kids that I did nearly 100% of what they did orally. We read it aloud. We talked it through. They dictated to me. They used dictation software. You know, we did almost 100% orally, and they did great in college.
Wow.
And so don't feel like that's something that you have to force a round peg into a square hole. You know, that you can adapt any way you want to. And in fact, adapting your curriculum and making accommodations in your school will help them get accommodations on the SAT and ACT and in college. Most people don't realize that, but they will ask you what accommodations they've received. And if you are struggling if you're just panicked and thought, how do we get accommodations? Hal and I've written a book about that. It's called Help is on the Way, a guide to accommodations on the SAT, ACT, and in college for homeschoolers.
Really? Oh, wow.
On our website, yeah.
That's awesome.
And it will walk you through the testing you need to have, how to seek out accommodations, how to get them, what to do once you've got them, both on the test and in college.
You know, one thing related, we found out first off with one of our kids the one who was a late reader, lots of dyslexia and some other challenges. He started growing so quickly in high school that we got to his junior year and realized, you know what, he could graduate on time, but if he had one more year, he could really put a finish on his education left. And we talked with him about it, let him make the decision. It's his life. But what we found out, he graduated at the age 19. And what we discovered with his experience was nobody cared.
Nobody cared.
The colleges didn't care. The other students didn't care. Nobody cared that he was 19 and the rest of the freshmen were 18. Zero care. And
that was before the pandemic. Now a lot of kids are taking gap years, and so it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and so if that's something that worked, I mean, we've had another one who had a really serious illness during high school, and it took them 2 years to get through their sophomore year. You know, that son graduated at 19, same experience. Nobody cared, not a ripple. So you know what? If you find that taking 5 years to finish high school works best for your struggling learner or your child with a chronic illness or your family situation, great, go for it. You've got the freedom.
Yeah.
That is so encouraging.
It really is. And there's so many accommodations they can get in college. I was so worried about one particular child going to college, and he got so many accommodations and so much help, and he excelled in college. University-wide awards for his academics. Wow. And, you know, this kid that at 14, I was in despair, y'all.
Yeah.
And so, you know, don't be afraid. You can do this. Just realize nobody is going to ask to see their high school work. No one. You know, if you are in one of the few states like Pennsylvania, and there's a few countries that want you to put together a portfolio, but then that's a small percentage, and you can also have someone do an assessment separately from that. But nobody's going to say, I want to see their lab notebook. I want to see their essays. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so don't stress out. Learn however your child is able to learn. Just make sure they learn.
Hmm.
I feel like this has been so encouraging in so many ways. And I just feel like, parents who were, came to this nervous, like, how am I going to do this? They, realize that there's so many different ways to do it and just need to trust the Lord. And each child is different. And we know our children best, right? So he can give us the tools we need. Before we sign off, I would love if you could just maybe share. One time I heard you speak and you said something that stuck with me for all these years about how, raising boys, well, I guess any child, it's spiritual warfare. And that stuck with me so much because it was just like the simple things, like trying to get them to do their schoolwork and they were fighting against me. Like, you know what? This is spiritual warfare. This is a war. This is a fight, in the spiritual realm. So I would love if you could just talk to the parent that might be struggling. I don't know what your view is on, the rebellious teen years, if you believe that's a thing or have got, what your thoughts are on that. But can you help the parents who might be going through that?
That is so critical. And this is something which is it's really we find it's really important to be focusing on this during the middle school years.
Yeah.
And that is building a relationship
Yes.
of respect and love and trust between you
Absolutely.
and your child. And as they are transitioning through high school into early adulthood, you want to maintain that love and respect and trust because, when they graduate, when they leave home, that relationship is what's going to draw them back and
Yeah.
nothing else will. And,
Yes.
and so
Absolutely.
they need to know that you're on their side and that you're not browbeating them into something that for your own satisfaction, but rather to say, you know what, I'm trying to equip you for adult life.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you the tools so that you can engage in the work that God has given you, whatever that may turn out to
Yeah.
be.
Now, what we have seen talking to thousands of parents over the years
Hmm.
is that most parent-child relationships are broken during the preteen years.
Hmm.
And when they are, the teen years get worse and worse. And yes, you see the rebellious teens. But if you can maintain a healthy, trustful relationship through the preteen years, then the teen years tend to get better and better. And in our family, the teen years have not at all rebellious. And we're writing a book right now about the transition to adulthood. And I asked our adult kids, I said, why did none of you really rebel? And the answers they gave were all relationship focused. So I didn't want to disappoint you. I cared about what you thought. I knew you wouldn't like it. I wanted to be pleasing to God like you taught me to be. It was all about relationship.
Hmm.
And now some parents are watching this and thinking, well, I blew it. I've got a broken relationship and my teen's in rebellion. Then what you need to do is to stop focusing on rules and reining them in and start focusing on relationship. And that means listening to them.
That is so critical. And it's counterintuitive sometimes because you think they are, you think your child is unreasonable. They are living in a fantasy world. They're worried about trivial stuff, but they need to know that we are available to hear them and that we want to hear them and we want to understand them. And what we find is when you listen to them talk about Minecraft, when you listen to them talking about their clothes or their choice of, whatever, after a while, you've started to prove yourself. You've started to prove that, hey, I really do take you seriously. And you will find those things start to flow out that are really important. The heart matters that you really want to talk to.
Yeah.
And it's something that you have to kind of make the investment in the trivialities to prove that you're serious enough to be entrusted with the heavy stuff.
They will not listen. They will not share the important stuff unless you listen to the stupid stuff. I mean, honest to goodness. And that's really hard when you have a fractured relationship and you're really annoyed with them. Why do you want, they come by and they mutter something, you drop your phone, turn around and focus on them. What was that, honey? And it may get worse before it gets better, and I just put a link that you can share with people, How Not to Lose Your Teens. That is a workshop they can download that'll walk them through how to rebuild relationship. But absolutely the most critical part of high school, more important than transcripts, than college admissions, than getting it done, than driver's license, the most important part is relationship. Because that's the part that'll matter when they leave home.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all your valuable input and resources. Make sure those of you watching go to raisingroman.com/notlose teens. They also have a free resource over there. We'll have all these links for the replay, so everybody can check those out and check out your resources. And I just want to let everyone know that the NAC registration is open, and the practice tests are going to begin to be open October 1st. So if you are a schoolhouseteachers.com member, you can go to your member dashboard and you can receive a coupon code to receive half off of the NAC, which is the National Academic Homeschool Competition. It's for everybody, even if your child's not thinking about college. It also has other opportunities, whether it's military. So just check it out and see what is there for your high school years. And again, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure, and we'll see you next time on another Homeschool Live. Bye.
Enjoyed it, Heather. Bye.
Thanks.